Satipatthana, Vipassana practice, and it's coming directly from the text, the set of instructions the Buddha gave in this practice. Now, I don't know how familiar you are or how much you've practiced, but I gather from Julie that most of you are new to the practice. With a few exceptions, I've done some other practicing, but I'm sure you've all looked into it and read about it, and tried it, and also why you're here, what is your motivation, what is your interest, whether you've got the commitment, and all the rest of it, we shall see. But anyway, I'll try and accommodate everybody's interest here, whether you come just for some therapeutic benefit, we have not worked out a reason why you're doing it, and if so, or you're really committed to follow a particular practice. Unfortunately, this is just a one-off for me. I would prefer that you could follow on. But anyway, I don't know whether there are any Mahasi, particular Mahasi centres in KL. There's Sudan Jones who do this practice. So I just wanted to put that to you before, because it is important that you are able to follow through, and also that you've got some teachers around who can guide you. Okay, just to, who would indicate that they've done some Vipassana practice before? Okay, and I would say that perhaps you've done what's now known as the Goenka practice, true? Some nods there, at least one person there, and others have done perhaps the Mahasi. That's the two main...
Northern Southwest Australia. Venerable is also teaches regularly in Thailand, Malaysia and Singapore, as well as in Brisbane, Coffs Harbour, Blue Mountains Insight Meditation Centre. So with that, we are so happy today with Bhante to teach us the path, the track of happiness. Bhante, let us put our palms together and say sadhu 3 times. Invite Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much for the introduction. The title of the talk is slightly modified. It will be The Trap of Happiness. Will include that, or make reference to that, but we won't go into talking too much about the trap of happiness, but I'll refer to it as I go along. What I want to present first is the 8 worldly conditions, also known as the worldly winds. These express the duality of our existence in this world. These 8 worldly conditions, 8 worldly winds. And like a pendulum, they perpetually swing back and forth. We're caught between these worldly conditions. 4 are desirables, 4 are undesirables. Everybody experiences these 4 pairs of opposites in the course of their lives. Now, I don't know, I'm sure you're familiar with them, yes? You've heard of them. The first one is gain and loss, I mean, that would be with the financial meltdown. I'm afraid that would be high on many people's agenda, with gain and loss. So, then there's fame and infamy, or honour and dishonour. Perhaps that's not so, well, appear. Honour and dishonour, perhaps people are not so subject to that. And everybody might have their 5 minutes of fame, as it's said, but certainly infamy, I don't know. And there's praise and blame, which is it's an experience one has all the time. You know, like somebody's great webmaster of Buddhanet.net, and other people criticise me for a monk being on the internet, or so you get this praise and blame. You get these 8 qualities, positive and negative certainly, but what I want to look at or lead up to is how to work with them, how to maintain balance and equanimity, whether rather than being polarizing one way or the other. And especially as regards, because if one is caught in this seesawing, liking, disliking, gain and loss, of course one is essentially having a difficult time. One is in distress. Distress is really the root meaning of the Pali term dukkha. It's distress, unsatisfactoriness. So one is caught in that dukkha, is some distress in one's life. So as you would know, there are 3 levels of dukkha, you know. There's first everyday, ordinary dukkha. This is where we experience these worldly conditions in our everyday life. So we have these psychological difficulties. Then there's the next level is viparinama dukkha, when change. Now at the moment we're going through change, which is also very much a worldly. We talk about climate change, but change is natural. I don't know about climate change, it's more like climate damage. It will change, it always will change, the climate especially. Since the dinosaurs, even further back, there's always been change, it always will be. It's the most self-evident truth in the universe, is change. So we can be comfortable with change, but it's change, viparinama dukkha, is also being called the dukkha of happiness, because happiness, while it's in the American Constitution that we pursuit of happiness, but we cannot sustain happiness. It's one of the worldly conditions. There's happiness, and the flip side is unhappiness. So if we just seek happiness, it's in people who understandably want to popularize Buddhism, make it more palatable, rather than always presenting the fact of dukkha and suffering and very negative, glass of empty approach. They want to say that the glass is half full. So they will say, there is a certain unnamed teacher who comes through here as well, who would say, not the 4 noble truths of suffering, but the 4 noble truths of happiness. Well, there you go. It's make people feel good, because that's essentially what this notion of happiness is, to feel good. But can you sustain it? It's not natural to, what we need to come to maturity, or be mature enough to face reality. And when we see it, when we're inside into things as they actually are, then we will build our insight, understanding, it would mature into equanimity. In fact, you would be well aware, I'm sure, of the Bojjhangas, the 7 factors of enlightenment. And while we have the maturing factor, there is equanimity. So the factor before the actual breakthrough of realization. The mind has to become stabilized and equanimous. Of course, there's a stage in the insight meditation knowledges where we call Sankhya-Upeka, where the mind is having experienced dukkha yanas, which are not just psychological, then the mind stabilizes and is equanimous and accepting both the difficult conditions that arise in the body or mind, and not getting enthralled or excited or attached to pleasant things, you see, not getting caught in pleasant, unpleasant, liking, disliking, you see. The mind becomes into a equipoise, you know, a balance of mind. I would like to see, I would interpret the Buddha's middle path as much as this balance of mind. It can maintain, in spite of difficult conditions, it will still maintain its equipoise. So there's homeostatic balance in the mind. And that requires maturity. Now, it's all very easy to say, you know, and I'm sure you've heard much of this before. Attended many talks, we've studied Buddhist teachings and texts, but what about the doing? You know? So there are different approaches to Buddhist practice. There is one model of the mind, which might illustrate that nicely, which is the mind has its three levels, isn't it? And the different practices can be illustrated this way. You've just taken precepts by precepts, so that's tendencies and actions and deeds. So only the meditative practices will bring about experiential transformation, healing transformation, rather than simply taking on a set of rules. Now, but they are restraints. So if you look at a model of the mind, this is in the Visuddhimagga, I think, I'm not quite sure where I got it from originally, then you'll see there's three levels to illustrate Buddhist practice. So the level of restraint is restraining expression of both in one's actions and in one's verbal expression. Is undertaken to restrain oneself in that way. But what we are dealing with, essentially, are the anusayas, that's the latent tendencies of mind. So though we might restrain our words and deeds, there's still this toxins, if you like, in the mind that come up on the level of manifest level in the mind, in thought and anger and negative emotions. So at that level of concentration, one pointedness, whether you're doing a mantra practice that's repeating a phrase or a word, like Buddha or whatever, Hare Krishna, all the same. It's holding the mind to one object until you become absorbed, that is concentrated, and the effect of that is calm. It's calming meditation, the tranquility meditation. And it is therapeutic in as much as while you are concentrated, the mind is wholesome. And you will feel good. Okay? And that's why what most people know as meditation would be of this type. And it can be not just Buddhist, even Christian contemplation, Hare Krishna chanting, Sufi dancing, you name it. If you hold the mind to one object and become absorbed, the mind becomes unified and one-pointed, concentration arises, is calm and tranquil. And the moment of concentration, mind is wholesome. Okay. In Buddhist practice, Anapanasati is an example of that. In fact, you go very deep into deep absorption. Meditative absorption is called jhanas. So there's benefits there, but it is not sustainable only while you are actually, once you've induced a state, if you can maintain the state, it's fine. While there might be, you allow that there is some carryover, it soon fades away. It was based on the concentration. And the concentration is lost, then that state of mind that you've induced is gone as well. It can be a good base for the second type of meditation, which is anything based on pure awareness, noticing, investigating. And there are not so many instances of that. It's peculiar to Buddhist practice. You might find some modern teachers like Krishnamurti, Gurdjieff, you heard of Gurdjieff, you probably have. He was around about the 30s and 40s. He incorporated some of the Buddhist practices of what is known as mindfulness. Essentially, the awareness practice is to maintain present moment awareness. So these are two styles, if you like, two ways to meditate. Whatever the particular technique, there's a whole variety of Vipassana, insight meditation techniques. I just happen to be presenting one because it's what I'm trained in and authorized to teach. There's whole variations. So, now, again, it's not a matter of either or, one or the other. You can combine them very skillfully. And in the early tradition, when people were all came from a culture of meditation, bhavana, mental development, then many people at the Buddhist time would have already attained some high level of skill in concentration practices and be able to attain jhana. Now it's fairly rare. Few people have that commitment to specializing as a meditator. So you'll need people, right? You have a family and work, mortgage at home, not too much, and you've got all these real worldly problems that you need to incorporate in your daily life. So I'm suggesting, while you can use, and recommended you do something like Metta Bhavana or Anapanasati to help stabilize yourself, to maintain calm in your daily life. You also you can use the awareness technique and get the benefit as well. Combine those two. I don't know whether we've got time to do any Metta Bhavana later on in the day. Perhaps have people done that? Anybody? Metta, loving kindness? Just a few too, so some people have even done that. So perhaps we will go through that this afternoon. And that way, we will start with insight meditation, awareness meditation, and then combine it with this raw support, not as the main practice, but using it to support the more dry, if you like, awareness practices. Now, you need to know too, because perhaps you might like to follow up later, that the instructions the Buddha gave that can be found in the Satipatthana Sutta. I was told that there's a nun here who's given teachings on the Satipatthana Sutta. It's very important that you have some theory, some understanding of what you're doing. It's not enough just to get a technique and run with it. You should understand at least the map, the set of instructions that Buddha gave in the four. The Satipatthana, Sati is a key word. Actually, we call this practice vipassana, which is merely the outcome, the insight. The sati is the mindfulness practice. This is having presence of mind, having full attentiveness to what is happening in your own mind, from moment to moment. This is the mindful, or presence, I prefer actually, presence of mind. Being attentive, fully attentive to what is happening. So that is the core business. This is the what we are trying to do. A quality to develop, this presence of mind, which will develop to non-reactive awareness. That we can be just a witness to what is going on without constantly reacting and bouncing, perhaps even just wholesome way to our experience. Meditation that will, through a concentration, will inhibit the movement of the mind. The concentration will induce a calm state, essentially. But these latent tendencies in the mind still remain. And this conditioning is still there, is there? So while one is concentrated, one has successfully perhaps inhibited any manifestation of the mind. The latent tendencies still remain. Now, in Buddhism, they don't explain these anusayas, these latent tendencies, any more than they exist. I'm recently got more interested in neurology, and I'm inclined to think actually that the source of these are not just, sure, they're impurities of the mind, no doubt, but also there's a biological underpinning to the mind, which is the brain itself. And we can see within the brain there's a high level of the brain, the frontal lobes, which more or less manage the whole the expression of the mind itself. And there's a more primitive brainstem, if you like, reptilian level of the mind, where the limbic system has emotions, like the amygdala will trigger emotions. And we're creatures of our evolution, and these emotions are necessary for our survival, such as fear. And many of these emotions are there, and that perhaps is a source of these anusayas or latent tendency of mind. So when it's been shown that when we meditate, the executive part of the brain, the frontal lobes, are affected by meditation. So one meditates, the more sort of primitive, you like, emotions that are necessary or were necessary for our survival as hunter-gatherers, we no more need in more sophisticated societies. Anyway, be that as it may, just throw it in. Because many of the emotions and unwholesome expressions are coming from not necessarily interaction in some dispute or emotional problem. They're coming from this deeper level of the mind. And unless we're actually doing some form of meditation, insight meditation, this material will manifest in the mind. So in, say, the emotion of anger. Anger has been said to be like at the dormant or latent level, like a sleeping snake. You see, I can say I'm not angry now, am I? No, I'm not showing any anger. I'm not masking it, but there could be anger there. if I was provoked or stressed, you know, reaction. Because essentially what anger is the mind striking at objects. It's reacting. So, that sleeping snake is provoked in some way, usually in a relationship and so on. Because essentially, it's latent in the mind. If it's triggered in any way, it's like remains hidden, dormant there. If you let it, give it a chance, it will come up. These pollutants of mind, these negative emotions. So it's not so easy to dismiss. But that sleeping state, when it manifests, activated, it will come up into the mind as negative thinking and anger, you know, hot in the mind. So what do? We can inhibit the anger through, say, loving kindness meditation or some other samatha meditation, calming meditation. And we can stop the expression through the precepts, restraint. In Western psychotherapy, one is encouraged to express the anger, you know, some primal screaming or beat the pillar or whatever. So it's supposed that you can clear the mind through expressing it, through going down into, or psychoanalyzing it, and working out what caused the anger, what imprinted it. This, in Buddha Dharma, any expression is reinforcing it, is actually, and rather than deepening, if you like, that conditioning, that tendency to, that inclination to express the anger. So we restraint, but we come back to the expression that's the anger in the mind itself. So we can calm it, but it's still there in a dormant level. So that's what we've got to work on, is this deeper level in the mind. And it's only the sankharas that are in the mind, it's only through insight, exposing them, and seeing the true nature through seeing the insight knowledges. We can clear the mind. It's the only hope. In fact, if you come now to Western psychotherapy, the flavour of the month, if you like, is cognitive behaviour therapy. And if you look into the Vipassana meditation, inbuilt into the Vipassana meditation is cognitive training, which is essentially looking at the thinking and reframing your thoughts. There's nothing esoteric or special. It's simply being able to witness the thinking and not the non-reactive awareness that will move on with practice. So only through insight meditation with Vipassana, Satipatthana Vipassana, can you get the insights that will clear the mind. Because when we go to the factors of realization, as you would know, the 7 factors of enlightenment, Bojjhangas, we're looking at the series of qualities that are developed that will lead ultimately to the breakthrough. And one of the texts, as you would know, the Satipatthana Sutta, the 4 establishments of mindfulness. You're familiar with that text? Well, in the 4th section, Dhammanupassana, there you have the outcomes of the practice. You have of course, we have the nibbaranas, the hindrances, and you also have what develops in the practice, these 7 factors of enlightenment. And of course, you start off with sati. any Buddhist meditation, whatever combination, has to include, if you were to ultimately look for the final cleansing of mind, freeing of mind, then you have to be a practitioner of sati, mindfulness. You can do both. You can do, in fact, it seems a rather artificial distinction to say that you do one or the other. Why not combine them? Essentially, that's not a problem. Of course, there can be a pure Vipassana approach, which is probably suitable for most people who cannot dedicate themselves full-time to the practice. So that combination perhaps is not so in that you would fully develop the jhanas, or is not really realistically available for people who are working with family. It's not so easy even for full-time practitioners to achieve the jhanas. Realistically, we're looking at more or less and then body-mind, the gross, obvious, to subtle. So the subtleties are the feelings we're experiencing. The feelings are both physical, as body sensations, and mental feelings. And then we move into mind states or emotions. It's a sort of next, the third focus of attention. Body, experience, feelings, present, non-present, or neutral, quality, and mind states or emotions. It can also be / consciousness, but that's more advanced practitioners with it. So emotions, body, feelings, emotions, and mental qualities. If you've meditated at all, you'll have experienced possibly what we call the hindrances. You're familiar with the hindrances? I'm sure you've experienced them, one or the other, or maybe five of them. But when you start to introspect into the mind, you'll soon notice that these hindrances, or obstacles of meditative will arise. Like impurity in the mind can be there. Not necessarily so, but usually so. And these qualities of mind will arise. But as we practice, as we mature, we're able to observe the material of the mind states. We can see we will develop, based on our attentiveness, our mindfulness, and our ability to explore and examine our own mind-body phenomena, we'll soon see that practice evolves into concentration, and tranquility, and even joy. So it's not all grim, and there can be joy in the practice, but it's not sensuous joy. But the maturity always is in this homeostatic balance, this equanimity, balance of mind, until ultimately one could potentially make a breakthrough through the insight knowledge. So all the different techniques, whether it's Goenka, they all have a simplified version of this set of instructions. It takes a while to practice, develop. In fact, I will say to you, this is not a meditation workshop. I'm sorry we brought you here on false pretenses. You're not going to be meditating today. I've never meditated most of my life, and I don't intend to. What I've been doing is the Buddhist practice of bhavana. Bhavana means to develop, to grow. So we're developing a particular quality, even if it's concentration, we call like samatha bhavana, but it's developing concentrated mind. And vipassana bhavana is developing insights, understanding. So Buddhists, you see, because the meditation, if you go looking for a dictionary definition, you'll see that it's to think about, to ponder, to reflect, contemplate. That can apply to the first type of meditation, the concentration-based meditation, or samatha, but it doesn't apply at all to vipassana, because we're not reflecting. Reflection has its place, surely, but in vipassana meditation, which we have to call it meditation, it's about the direct experience without any thoughts or any imposing any concept or idea on the direct experience. It may seem rather strange because we're so used to experiencing the world through our cognitive ability. We don't really, but we can actually directly experience something as it is without interfering with it, without superimposing any preconceptions on what the actual experience, pure experience is. So in Vipassana, we don't reflect, we don't think about cognitive things. It's not conceptual. Samatha, yes, sure, it's conceptual. But Vipassana is just the experiential knowing. That might be seem a little difficult to sort of take in what I mean by that, but when you actually practice, you can appreciate that you can just know something when the mind is quiet, when there's no actual cogitating. You can have the direct experience, which is possibly more, without labeling it or describing it in a way, we have the pure experience, and that's it. That way you can know the reality of what is happening in the mind and body, and not what you're projecting on, imagine, or even assume is there. You can possibly know the phenomenon as it is. So it will free you from delusion. Any delusion or any distortion, these assumptions, inbuilt assumptions. Benefits of this is we can connect with the cause of suffering, why we suffer, why we hassle ourselves, and therefore others. Because you know the Four Noble Truths. Do you know the Four Noble Truths? We accepted the fact that there's suffering. The suffering, we could say, as mentioned last evening, there are different levels of it. But essentially, this is suffering, at the Pali word, dukkha, distress. Essentially, core meaning is distress. So, we acknowledge that there is distress. It is one of the three universal characteristics: change, distress, and the impersonal processes of mind. These are the three universal characteristics which we experience in insight meditation. We have this experience of these three universal characteristics. But with this distress, there is a cause. Right? You know the cause. You know the formula, so you know the cause. The cause is, as you know, is this hankering, this desire. We could say there's a biological basis of an underpinning. Actually, but above that, there is this condition of craving, which creates attachments to death and suffering. Now, only in Vipassana can you be free of that. You can decondition the mind from those very powerful drives So that's the potential of the Vipassana, is that we can free the mind from its even natural conditioning, its cravings.
This is a particular path that the Buddha discovered after all these 2,500, 600, 550, whatever years, still available. We find now many of the Western therapies, psychotherapies, they are picking up this practice. There's more therapists doing what used to be called cognitive behavior therapy. I mentioned cognitive training is inbuilt into Vipassana meditation. They're not even calling it cognitive behavior therapy. Many now are just calling it mindfulness. So you can reframe your thinking, you can change your attitude, how you're relating to things you learn, put some insight into the mind itself, not the. So, as you know, say, then the first of the 7 factors of realization, the first 2 are combined. They are sati, mindfulness, combined with investigation of the phenomenon of the Dhamma. Yes, means phenomenon. That is one's own mind and body phenomenon. One is investigating that with sati and examining it, which then requires that you apply yourself, you put in energy and effort and sustain that effort. And this is the 3rd factor, which leads to stability or tranquility of the mind. And then concentration. To me, this concentration is it's confusing what is meant by concentration. I'm inclined to, and it's my own spin that maybe is that I don't see concentration as fixed concentration, as absorption in this context of Satipatthana, but more that it's intensification of the mindfulness combined with the examining investigation. Because concentration of itself will naturally arise, build up in intense practice, type of retreat. It will build up of itself. So one doesn't need to, surprisingly, it doesn't need to pump up the concentration, induce the state, and then switch into Vipassana mode. One is impeccable in one's continuity of awareness, sustains it, and one is actually connected with, has experience of the 3 characteristics of change, dukkha, the dukkha yanas, and the processes of the mind, then one can have some insights that can break through the basic conditioning. These anusayas, these latent tendencies of the mind, can free the mind of this decondition of the mind. That was the genius of the Buddha, was to show this practice. He had, as you might know, had gone before his final enlightenment, was enlightenment, the Bodhisattva at Gaya. He had gone to 2 teachers to learn the high level of the jhanas. And when he had mastered them, the teachers offered him that he then could take over, could teach. But he said, no, it wasn't the way of itself. Concentration meditation is not the way. It's not the full way for Buddhists. I think that's quite clear. Combination that was in the early tradition, people, especially in the Buddhist time, when people were more able to achieve the mastery of the jhanas, not just have flashes of it. It's quite quite a rare thing actually. I'm quite concerned that the teachers going around suggesting that lay people who may meditate just casually, occasionally, can achieve the jhanas. I spent about 3 years in Sri Lanka at Nitya with a teacher there, the Jnanarama, and there was probably about, I don't know, about 20 monks. Some have been there long term, Sri Lankan monks, and some few Western monks like themselves. And only one monk in the 30 years had actually mastered the jhanas. Other monks, I mean, you could just occasionally get flashes and sustain for a little while, but not master the jhanas. So you could then switch into Vipassana mode. It's not so easy, you know. I've been to Singapore, and people said, oh, I had a teacher and I could get the jhanas. So how long do meditate for? Oh, half an hour. They see some lights and think, oh, that's great, you know, I'm in the jhana, okay, that's cool. I mean, they want to believe that. But there's one thing about Buddhist practice, you've got to be honest with yourself. I mean, it's very difficult to be honest. It's meant not lie to people or even apply things. But if you're not honest with yourself, or somebody thinks that you attain some state when you haven't at all, then you've got a big problem. You have to, because you're very easy to get caught in delusion. So that's why you need a teacher when you're practicing Vipassana. You need a guide. You need somebody who's had travel experience, even if as much as they know it will be a bit further than you have. Because you're traveling, when you do Vipassana meditation, unknown territories of the mind, and you can easily get deluded. In fact, there's a stage in the practice when you practice well and you've become very fluent, and you get jhana-like effects. And we call that stage the corruptions of insolence. And some people go off and think they're enlightened. They want to teach the Dhamma to everybody, but we had a case in Australia with Chinese Sadhu Janika. This chap was a monk's retreat. The chap did very well, but he got to that stage. He had some jhana effects, Now, unfortunately, the course finished at that time, and now he's going off teaching, and he thinks he's a guru and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, we didn't go far enough, you see. So there are, if you're doing intensive practice, you need a Kalyana, a guide, and to practice. So these, then you may be able to get over the hindrances and move on to the maturity in the practice. The penultimate level, if you like, is equanimity. But it's not an induced equanimity as you might get in the Brahmaviharas. You know those as well. I'm sure you know. You know Metta, Karuna, Mudita, and Upekkha, you see. That is a samatha practice. You could even get jhana, it's said in that too. But the equanimity, the packet that rises in that is induced. Whereas the equanimity in the Vipassana meditation is coming from experiencing the dukkha yana, you've gone through that, and then the mind comes to an understanding and acceptance is how things are, rather than an induced state where you can just feel good. Because that's very important that you work with the feelings in Buddhist practice. Because we are beings on the sensory plane, yes? Essentially, we experience the world around us through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. And in early Buddhism, the mind was considered just another sense. which it is in a way, just a sense. So we are feeling here through our sense spheres or sense doors, and the majority of the practice, Satipatthana practice, is actually the 6 sense doors. So, liking, disliking, I mentioned as one of the worldly conditions, isn't it? And if you like something, of course it means that there's pleasant feelings, and if you dislike something, there's unpleasant feelings. So liking, disliking. Now, in the Satipatthana Sutta, there we have, Vedana. So we're working with or monitoring the feeling tone that we're experiencing at any moment, whether it's body feelings. I mean, you can always check up, what feeling am I experiencing now? I mean, the body has many sensations and unpleasant feelings. It may be very low key, you're slightly off colour, as we say, and it's merely a name or label becomes what you're doing. You must stay more with, very likely, if you need to, beginner, yes, I would suggest you do it, that you name it as it rises. Whereas later on, you can drop the noting, and just be able to be aware of it once you have connected with the pure movement. It's important that you don't interfere with it. It's not that the movement should be there all the time. It's not your ambition to be 100% on that movement. That's not the nature of Vipassana practice. Naturally, if you cannot sustain that attentiveness, you will revert to secondary objects. Okay, they become predominant. You know the thinking, you're aware that you're sleepy, the mind state, or some physical discomfort or pain, the posture is there. So then you go to that and observe that. So essentially, there's 2 things happening. You're having been present what is going on in the body. That is mindful, sati, mindful, present. But also you need to investigate it, because there's 2 factors required. They're a pair. You're present with the experience, but you're also examining the experience. Or the investigating the phenomenon. You investigate. It's not simply enough to be present with it. You need to pick up its specific characteristics. And unless you pick up the specific characteristics, you've really just been present, which is okay. But you're not reading what's happening. You're not getting any understanding. So this investigate, this examining is by picking up specific characteristics. We call this lacking, sabhava lacking, this particular characteristics. So this particular approach, Mahasi, is about movement, internal movement. We'll do later on some walking, meditation, formal walking. We'll also do just getting about, going from A to B, travelling about, activities, eating, going to the bathroom, all these things too are part of the practice of ongoing awareness throughout the day. So there are 3 areas of practice: the formal sitting, the formal walking, and the awareness of your daily activities. Essentially, they would be physical movements, limb movements, body movements throughout the day. So we try to build up a continuity of awareness. It's not supposed to maintain 100% level of awareness until you get very deep into the practice. The mind is not like that. The mind will, at times, it goes up and down, you get distracted. It's okay.
You need to manage yourself in the practice. At times you're fully present, other times you just need to tread water. You're not forcing yourself to be 100%. You go through cycles. At times you're fully present. At times the mind's not so clear. The body is feeling lethargic, and we just need to manage one's energy and within the practice. So this technique of naming can help you very much stay with, even at least if you're naming it, you're there to some extent. You might not be able to pick up the subtlety of what is happening, but it's critical that we're picking up the particular characteristics. When you tune in enough, this practice, I said, is developmental, by the way. So we probably within this day, unless you're a genius or you've done a lot of practice in a previous lifetime, you're not likely to go so deep. What I hope you will get the basics, and then you can develop it, work, develop so deeper later. But I will point out to you that the mechanical practice of itself is no benefit. You must be looking for the subtleties within the movement, whether it's the sitting movement, the abdomen, whether it's posture. See, there's another, we combine, so in the first section of the Satipatthana Sutta, there's also 4 postures, which is something we can also do very nicely too. It's quite simple. There are 4 postures, 4 main postures: sitting, standing, walking, lying down. And lying down too, with the abdomen movement, if you're lying down, there's no tension. So that's something too you can explore. If you're finding any difficulty in with picking up the movement, and if you're lying flat on the back, probably don't go up to sleep, then you can, there's no tension. So you can find it very natural internal movement. Okay, so let's recap. With the meditation posture itself, we're not into doing full lotuses, half lotuses, or anything like that. Usually a sort of tailor fashion is sufficient. But it's important that you keep the body relaxed and in balance. You've got to feel the balance of the body. So you can almost let go of any holding that's in the body. There's any tension. So very much, if you've done yoga, especially it's very useful that you can connect with the body. And it's important that you will not expose what is there if there's contraction. If there's any tightness or tension, holding in the body, then you cannot tune in, you cannot experience what is happening in the body. So it's very crucial that the body is open and relaxed. So it will tell you what's there. But if you're tight, so the body's got to be relaxed and alert. So it's a body, keep an upright position and it's nicely balanced. Then you can just leave the body as is. It's not going to pull your attention necessarily. It's useful as a preparatory stage to scan the body plant by plant, relaxing. And even during a session, check for tension. Usually shoulders, so, but without being holding, without stiffness or rigidity. Just nice and relaxed, and you just open to what is there. Okay. Now it's important too, during a formal session, that you do not move. And you make no unconscious movement. that is, I mean, so, because you see people, you know, when you're in the formal meditation, the impulse, for instance, to give the example of itchiness, you know, so normally you do that unconsciously, you itch, scratch, you know, there's irritation of skin. So, okay, but you haven't been there for the real experience, which is first the irritation of skin. What you need to find is the urge, the desire. If you can tolerate that urge, that is the cause of your suffering. I mean, maybe it's a trivial example, but that, you know, urge, and you just playing it out every time you do it, it's reinforcing it. But if you can just sit there and with an itch, so that builds up your strength, the ability you can do physical urge. Acknowledge the presence of that, so we put bodies, feelings and sensations. We tend to react, we resist it, you know, want it to go away, not liking it, see? And we may be only partially aware of that. So we put our full attention on the unpleasant feeling and just watch it without identifying with it. That's the trick, not say it's my feeling, it's just in a sort of neutral way, it's just a physical sensation in the body that happens to be unpleasant. And so, you see, if we can relate to it that way, we can see that pain is present. Pain is inevitable. There's a nice saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. You don't need to suffer. In fact, if you suffer, unless it's unnecessary suffering, because if you're savvy, if you're tuned into the experience, the body or the mind, then with intelligence, you can just observe that as a witness, not identifying with it as mine or me. See? Well, that's sort of easy enough to say, but again, if you're into deeper Vipassana meditation, you can start to see the distinction between the mind and body. So you can see the body is doing its thing and the mind is leading, whereas we tend to experience the body is leading. But the body, while it has its own intelligence, doesn't know. Only the mind is leading. You know the verse in the Dhammapada, the first one? The mind leads, you know. So, if you work with feelings, unpleasant feelings, you won't be trapped through disliking, and the same, you won't be trapped by liking, pleasant feelings. The Buddha said suffering, one definition of hell is that there's unpleasant feeling in all the sense doors. The suffering is, while we acknowledge the fact of suffering and we understand the cause, you see there's something else too as far as Vipassana goes. We're looking at not just the cause, but we are working with the cause itself. You know, the urges in the mind, even the physical urges, you know, the biological urges that we have. For instance, I mean, it's just a trivial example I give. Say we have an itch in the body. Normally we, without thinking, without being aware, we'll relieve the irritation of the skin. But as a meditator, you can just observe that irritation and the impulse to relieve the irritation, and it just passes by. So if you're able to do a simple thing like that,
eventually you'll be able to look at the irritations of the mind and just unpleasant, anger, comes and goes. So you're there, you've got created space in the mind that can just observe things without reacting, without bouncing off them. It's a great freedom, it's a great blessing to have that ability. And it's something we can train and do. It's nothing that somebody else can give you. It's something you're prepared to go through the training and commit to that. You will find that in good time, you're able just to watch the emotions and the feelings arising and passing away without identifying, clinging. As you know, we cling, the Buddha said, we cling to these 5 aggregates, these 5. You know, the body, the most obvious, the most gross thing. We identify with the body. It's me and mine. And we see almost a mirror image in our mind. We just see form and shape. We don't see the elements of the body or its reality. Feelings. We're identifying with feelings. Are you aware of it now? Pleasant. Even the condition of the body at this moment, pleasant, unpleasant. The perception. Are you noticing your perception? Vipassanas are simply about noticing, really. You boil it all down to that. It's just noticing. Being attentive, being present. Sati means presence of mind. And then investigating what one is experiencing as it's happening. So, yeah, feeling, perception. And our whole world's made of these fabrications of mind. If it's not happening now, it's just memories and old stories. We self-torture to a large extent. With our materialist culture of mind. We're not in the present. So these sankharas, these mental constructions of mind, fabrications of mind, our story comes at everything, isn't it? Even when we dream about, what happened, we're trying to sort out our problems. Because we're not looking at thinking, we're caught up in the content of the mind. The story. We live in the content. That's it. If the Buddha's teaching, you can step back and just observe it. It's possible. So, and still function as an everyday world. But not, you see, people think meditation is selfish, self-absorbed in your own thing, but if you develop yourself to any extent at all and get some insight, then it affects people around you. You don't have to go and save the world. We're all in relationships. Even a monk in the forest, a nun in the monastery, we're all linked up. So if you develop yourself to any extent, you're going to get some understanding, wisdom. You'll help others naturally in your behaviour, way of relating. So that's critical, being caught in the story, because what insight meditation does, it takes you from the content down to the process level. Processes of the mind. In fact, insight meditation, Vipassana, can be called process meditation, because when you have let the story and the content go, you'll be seeing the underlying processes, like the process of perception, for instance, is quite interesting. Mind you, the intensity of the practice will heighten that ability to pick up the processes. Normally you're probably, especially if you're engaged in an intensive retreat, you'll be able to mind. In fact, they did study. I was in Barre, Massachusetts in the early 80s. The Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts. And they did a study on nearby Harvard University. They did there was a chap, Daniel Brown, who did a test on the 3 months falls retreat they have every year. With over 100 meditators for 3 months. This is the Insight Meditation Society. And this Daniel Brown, a psychologist, they did a test on perception test. A thing called a tracheoscope. It was just a black box with a flashing light, and was able to measure, I don't know how, some way, one's perception level that one could pick up that flashing light. So they did this, the classical, the control group, which happened to be the staff, the meditators, and they picked out 30 of the meditators who were going to do the 3 months retreat before, and they checked them afterwards. Now before this, like apparently IQ tests, intelligent quotient condition, so some mental urge comes out, you have the potential possibility of not reacting, just looking at it, not too bad. But usually we're so impulsive we play that. So that impulsiveness, that reactive sort of mind, you can just settle back and observe it, become a witness to the experience. And therefore you're not caught so much by these deep urges of the mind. It's not a simple thing to do this. Starting with holding the body, keeping the body still, if any inclination to move, then you must know why you moved. Okay, you can move, but not to move before you know the cause of it. Because it may be obviously that you want to move because there's discomfort, pain in the body. Okay? But you may look at that too, that's can be another object to practice. Looking at the discomfort without automatically moving away from, avoiding. Okay, you can look at it, build up some tolerance to it, certainly. But, so that can be the body is the cause of the movement. It could be that the mind is just restless, agitated. It could be the cause, and you move the body. But you don't. But if the mind is restless, why do you do? There's nothing to do with the body, is there? So why not just? So that moving the body is a way of distracting yourself, moving and not dealing with the restlessness or disturbance in the mind. So if you're disciplined, sufficiently disciplined, and it's only the discipline here is not superimposed by anybody outside yourself. It's the discipline is in following the practice itself. That is the discipline. So, if the mind is restless, why move the body? No, because you're just going to avoid. But if you keep the body still and there's restlessness in the mind, you're looking at mind state, the restlessness. It's not a matter of evaluating it, making a judgment about it, it's just restless in the mind. And if you stay there and watch it, maybe name it as restless, or just be there, be aware of it. Like everything else, it passes. It arises and passes away. It won't stay there all day, well it might. No. It comes, everything comes and goes. Why hassle yourself, So, it's beneficial to keep the body as much as possible still during the formal practice, so you can see behind what's the cause of this movement. Now, when people meditate, you can find three things that bother them. First, sleepiness. Sleepiness. It
maybe that you have some, you call it sleep debt, you might not have sufficient rest, you've been working during the week, it's just the first day off, so maybe you're tired, physically tired. All those concepts suggest if you are the same. But after the end of the retreat, they found that 3 months meditators, Vipassana meditators, at least doubled, 100%, some people much more. And that allowed them to pick up the perceptual process. So that is, when you eyeball something, and there's a visual, immediately there's there's the consciousness, the knowing of it, with a feeling. A feeling tone. It's pleasant, unpleasant, or even neutral. I'll talk about neutral because it's interesting about neutral feelings. But anyway, so at that perceptual process, when there's a visible object, eye, visible object, when there's content, consciousness is very fast. But there's a feeling tone that you can pick up. If you pick up the feeling quality there, then that's all that happens. You know the feeling is pleasant, unpleasant in the story. If you don't, automatically you'll make an association of thought with that feeling, which we normally do. And with that thought becomes elaboration, papancha, and you get into the story. And off you go with the theories. Off the story goes. So it's not so easy as I sort of indicated, really. So it depends on the quality of the perceptual process. And that will come in practice, in more intensive practice, surely. But in that way, you're off the hook. It's just a feeling, pleasant or unpleasant. That's it. The Buddha said you just know feelings and feelings, and that's it. But once we normally will automatically associate and get caught up into the story and elaboration, and on the mind goes, that's it, you see? So you're caught. Whereas to know the feeling as feeling, pleasant or unpleasant, is taken condition. So liking, disliking doesn't happen. You can maintain an even keel. You will maintain equanimity in that situation. It's not withdrawing, it's not being aloof or indifferent. It's simply okay, it's equipoise. You're still engaged. So of course it requires high level of alertness, presence, sati. So we can work with feelings, pleasant feelings. And when you get into a very subtle level, you can pick up the ending of a feeling. Normally you wouldn't be able to do that. You can pick up it before it associates. So there's pleasant feelings that we like, we pull in, and unpleasant feelings we push away. Liking, disliking, we work on the will-be conditions. Happiness, unhappiness. So we don't get caught into looking for happiness. Happiness, joy is one of the factors of enlightenment. As you know, joy. But it's non-sensuous joy. It's quite a different quality than what we perhaps normally associate with joy. This non-sensuous joy is a necessary ingredient for enlightenment. So it's not all miserable and dry. It must be joy. In fact, the Buddha, before his enlightenment, was nose into the ascetic practices. This came to a dead end. The same happened, in India today there are still yogis, sadhus who do this practice, and the Jains still follow the practice, even they have a spiritual suicide
or they allow for it, that a person can get to such a pure, apparently a pure level, they won't eat anything, so to not kill the bacteria or anything like this. I think that's okay to do that, but that's an extreme. But this, so even in Europe in the Middle Ages, people were into scourging themselves and all this. So that's not of course, Buddha's middle path, but these feelings can be done any place. Perhaps not in as much as picking out the perceptual process of feelings, but you can be, as a practice, as you get around in your everyday life, you can be observing feelings, as the same with thinking, because we're constantly caught up in associating, and because we don't, I feel that a lot of people don't, if you're not a meditator, you're not allowing the accumulations, the build-up of material, you're not allowing that, this natural clearing of that. So that builds up, and the mind can get sort of overfull with unwholesome preoccupations. So I feel that if you don't do regular meditation, however long, in whatever practice, you're not clearing the mind, you're not allowing, at least if you do a daily sit, for instance, it's mental hygiene. You know, thoughts will come through and you can just let them run, and they just lose their energy. So it clears the mind. So feelings are crucial in being free of the worldly conditions. But we have pleasant and unpleasant. I want to say too, there are neutral feelings. When we have neutral feelings, which is neither pleasant or unpleasant, the mind tends to space out. It loses present moment awareness. If there's no strong enough pleasant or unpleasant. Unpleasant, we're aware. We're forced to attend. As it were. But with neutral feeling, the mind tends to, there's not an obvious pleasant or unpleasant, the mind tends to be not knowing, in ignorant of the present moment awareness. Present moment, so it loses awareness. So it's, practicing is to be monitoring feelings throughout the day, whether they're minor feelings coming and going. It's a very simple thing. You don't need any special cushions or hall or any particular. You can just be wandering around, you can be even shopping and, just noticing particular feelings or thoughts that arise, coming and going. If you do so, you tend to become more neutral towards them. You just accept them as, and you don't take them so seriously. Where we tend to be very self-absorbed, self-obsessed, self-cherishing, and it's caught up in our thoughts and imagining. But once you start watching the thinking during the day, then you'll see that how often you just go off into a fantasy or daydream. I mean, I'm just talking to myself. I know you guys out there have deep and profound thoughts, philosophical thoughts. But when I watch, I think, rubbish, I'll just move on. So I think even it can have a bit of humour in it, if you take it yourself too seriously or you take your thinking too seriously, then you get into delusion about it. So, but if you do that, if you do a daily sit, at least you're clearing the mind. It's mental hygiene. And you can be fresh, and then attentive to things come. When things come up, you can respond appropriately. You're not preoccupied with, it's like when you're going to a meeting, you do some rehearsal, what you're going to say, there's different strategy you're going to have, and then when you arrive there, it all changes. You're sort of stuck with the script. So a lot of the time, we're caught in our script, what we're going to do, how we're going to strategy, and but when we actually get there, it's all changed. And look, we're sort of not, we're caught in our preparation, and rather than, if you can trust yourself, you can have quite a clear mind, empty but clear, and allow yourself to respond to pressure. Tendency is to cut off. There's a lot of thinking, but we can work with how to manage these thoughts. So, that's it. There's the sleepiness, the thinking, there's something else that's sort of stationary. What else have you experienced in those functions? Common to all of them is pain. Now, pain is something we can work with too, but also workable. Pain. And what we're talking about pain here, if you sit for long enough, I'm not used to this posture, so you'll have posture pain, possible. I'm not talking about any pre-existing medical condition like back or something. I'm talking about pain that comes through posture. So we can discuss that more later. Working with pain in meditation. Actually, in the Burmese tradition, it's often said that pain is a doorway to nirvana. And if you go to the Burmese teachings, the side of the report and interview, one had no pain, also terrible. Congratulations, you're very well. Very good. So you don't get any sympathy, you're encouraged to explore it. So the insight will come to how you're related to the so-called pain, because it's part of the body identification. When there's pain in the body, pain is a signal to the body saying there's something wrong, something missed, See to it, it's a signal telling you something's wrong. But as we know, it's just mere posture pain, do no damage, then you can see that you can work with pain, see its characteristics, and pain, like everything else, be reassured that you will not get stuck there. One thing about the Dharma is, whatever happens, however difficult, distressful things are, nothing sticks. It'll change. It's essential. So even with pain or whatever, this economic downturn, it's going to go up and down, up and down. So it'll change. For the good or the worse, it doesn't matter. It changes there. So with pain too, if you can just you can tolerate it and find its specific characteristics within the pain, so-called pain itself, just a knowing, then you can break that identification with the body as pain. It's just pain. It's not my pain. It's just body pain. Nothing else. But that too, while it's a very simple, seemingly very simple practice, actually it can be quite profound and transforming. You get some little insights, experientially, not intellectual. You probably have heard this all before, know all about it anyway. But the actual doing of it, the experience of it, will bring healing and transformation of it. So if you are patient, the Buddha said in the verses about patience and forbearance. Surely we need patience. We also need the ability to tolerate this stress and difficulty. And so this forbearance is the power of the meditator. It's where you get your strength. You're able. It's not just being stoic or toughing it out. You need to explore the experience, examine it. It's from that you will get the insights. It's not just mindless looking at it. Examine, it will reveal its nature if you're investigating it, finding the particular characteristics
which will then, if you know this particular characteristics, it reveals the universal characteristics of each of the. Okay. Now, this is supposed to be a workshop. I can't hear you guys sitting there looking at me and I'm just talking on and on and on. I don't know how much you take in of anybody's talks and instructions. Is there any question that comes to mind? What I've really said? It seems not to be form there. It's sort of some quite peculiar effects come when you just with the and you can experience all them. Sometimes the foot gets so heavy you almost can't lift it because the earth element is so strong. Or it's so hot, burning. So if you get to that level with deepening intensification of events, you get to that level. And you get some, you know, as if you're walking on air and all these other effects on the foot is pulling itself. There's no sense of, normally when I move, there's a sense of, of course I've made that movement. But if you just with pure movement, there's nothing behind it in control. What's behind it, what's causing the movement, is the mental intention that's triggered the movement. So that's another deeper level, picking up the mental intention before the movement. But we won't go that is, if we get, I can make it too complicated. But there is a mental intention before it triggers the movement. See that, what's going on there? I'm flicking the finger. It's the mind movement. You can't move without, the body can't move without. It's been sitting back go. So there's mental intention. It can be found in the more refined level of practice very easily. In fact, there's mental intention all the time. Everything you do, every body movement is mental intention. We don't normally, we're not normally aware of that. But anyway, it's something else. Before each movement, there's a mental intention that will trigger the movement. And if you can pick up the mental intention, then you can get into the movement as it were. Even if you pause before the movement, if you catch, what I'll say there, I won't tell you too much, if you catch the beginning of the movement, right, that's a good tip. If you catch the beginning of the movement, then instead of being external to the experience of the movement, you go, as it were, into the movement, and you'll find within any phenomena, there's a beginning, there's a middle, it manifests, and there's an end, passing away. There's three phases in all phenomena in the universe, as far as I know, as far as we know. We found a planet, the Hubble Space Telescope, was found that planet was unbelievable distance away. So we don't know what's happening with this. But as far as I know, there's three phases. You can find them. There's a beginning, middle, and end. Birth, life, and death. And you'll see that in the phenomenon. You get one simultaneous. It begins, it rises, manifests, and passes away. That's life, you see. And if you catch the beginning, even of the gross movements in the body, you will, as it were, you will be there at the trigger that sets off the movement, and you will, instead of being externalized to it, you go actually, as it were, into the movement and find the discontinuous movement. Eventually, when you tune in, not today. 6 weeks, 3 months of work. If you don't have time about 3 months, that's what we're going with. Definitely it's there. Of course, you would normally do so.
So that way, that identification, that clinging to the body is lost. The body is just a body, it's not one of the natural processes. So you can find everything in the walking that you'll ever find in the city. So if you had a problem, like, some people with back troubles, although ideally it's best to combine them, just maintain the balance. Now sit and now walk. You can find most what's going in the person in the walking. There's many occasions and examples of people actually coming right. In fact, the very last person to approach the Buddha, Subhadra, I think his name was, said it just before the Buddha's paradigm was as he was lying dying. Instead of the copies, he went outside, did some walking meditation, boom, and got it. Just for the movement. And another example of that is Venerable Nanda. You know his story? He only got the first level, it was a Sotapanna, entry level. You know, just beginner, more or less, even though he was a person who attended the Buddha. And when Nanda was, the Buddha was indisposed, as occasionally was a human being, Ananda would give the talk. You know, and everything we know is reported what the Buddha said comes from Ewan Me Sutta. I heard that that's from Ananda. Retentive memories of that time, especially Ananda. So he had all the knowledge. You can have all the information, knowledge, but not yet get it, you know. You haven't actualized it. So after the Buddha's Parinibbana, the first council, Ananda, because he had all the Dharma that we had, he was invited to become one of to recite it all at the first council, but yet one condition that he had made his breakthrough. So the previous night said that Ananda really went for it, you know. Back and forth he walked and meditated until he almost exhausted himself. And he was at the point of giving up, and as he lay, as he went to lie down, that movement of lying, he got it. So movement can be the key to it. Well, essentially, this particular Vipassana approach is about movement. So that's an example of somebody attaining just through pure movement. As Ananda moved the body down, posture to lie down, then they will naturally quiet. The mind will naturally quiet. That's the benefit. One can actually be present when the next thought arises. It's possible. It's possible. You'll find gaps in the thinking. If you just observe the thoughts, you know, just watch, let the mind run, and then you'll notice that there's breaks, pauses in the thinking. Then you've got the opportunity to pick up the beginning of the thing. But what the mind does, essentially, it's very circuitous. The thinking is very circuitous. It's good to break the circuit, as it were. And I find it useful to is just naming it as thinking, not classifying it as a particular thought, but just naming it as thinking, because the mind will just come round again. Circuitous thinking. But if you name it thinking, even that, because most of the time we pick up thinking, it's retrospectively. We're already, we got lost in the thought, and then we'll be thinking. Well, what we would do at that point, we'll say thinking. So that circuitous, that thought can be, the circuit can be broken. And you'll find that the mind then will naturally and then you can, when the mind is quiet, so while you're thinking is second-hand. It's not it's symbolic. Thought and symbols, isn't it? It's language. It's not the immediate experience. You have an experience, you try to describe it, whether it's poetically, scientifically, or whatever way, it's not the experience, it's only the description. It's not the immediate experience. But when the mind naturally acquires, as it will, in the past, and believe you me, it might take some time, then you know, well, there's a direct experiential knowledge. It is not conceptual, gone past the concept's idea. So then you can experience the elements. You know, we can talk about the elements, earth, air, fire, and water. There's also a space element, by the way. That's not possible to apprehend. So we're locked into concepts and ideas. Well, they're useful intellectually. Of course, we're not going to dismiss them, but for the meditator to deeply into the mind, to clear the mind. Because the Buddha, as you know, said the mind is actually luminous. You know? It's just these pollutants that we have. We unfortunately, there's very little understanding in the culture. I don't know, I think it's here in the Buddhist country, it's very few people actually practicing a deep level that they can, all our troubles are from up here. And somebody was discussing with me about what's meant by Nibbana and enlightenment. I don't know. The standard thing I would say, you're free of the pollutants, you know. You don't need to try to explain it anymore because you can't explain it in a conceptual way. But if the mind has no greed, hatred, and ignorance, what more do you want? You know? That's enough, isn't it? That's a big relief. So then one is free at that moment. And if you have sati and you're in the present moment, that's the blessing. The mind's clear, free. You're present, you can respond. You're not in a trance, you're not in an induced state. You're just present and free and respond appropriately, authentically. I think I'll leave it at that. Sorry if I didn't entertain you, but I'll try next time. Okay, thank you. When we come together and we share our energy and time. It's said in Buddhist culture that we make merit. An understanding of merit can be well-being. So we create well-being for ourselves. So we don't want to hoard that, put it in the bank. We want to share it, and we can make a gift of our well-being as practitioners to others. I'll just say a little verse of sharing this gift of merit. May the merit made by us now or at some other time be shared by all beings here. By rejoicing in this cause, this gift of merits given by us, may all beings live a happy life, be free from hate, and may they find the path secure and their good wishes all succeed.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And who knows? Possibility. Okay, so I was talking about the falling movement.
one's practice, you will experience pity, even in the passive meditation, because while you're not getting the jhana, full absorption, there's what we call threshold concentration, which naturally builds up and you get pity effects. So there's 5 levels of pity, if you're interested. There's also, you can get an effect of body, as if you were, have you ever done any body surfing? So you get this little movement that comes spontaneously. And then you might even have an effect, it's quite not so common, the body jerks up. Have you heard in English the expression jump for joy? You literally jerk up. It's sort of exciting. Sometime back, there was a time period, which is quite unusual. From the time I'm practicing it, that time period, and you get very powerful concentration. And we were sitting on the floor like this, like the kids at the Central this morning, and they were just sitting on the floor, on the marble floor. No cushion anyway, but in Burma at the time, we never used cushions. I'm talking about 23 years ago. Burma was indigenous to since the Westerners moved in, we all got cushions, and the Burmese had cushions in the West. But anyway, but this timer, he would literally jump. His body would jerk up and crash. So that's another level of pity. In the Sudamite, steps with this pity, pure action. So that's actually the final is quite peculiar, because especially in a climate where it gets very sweaty, at least everybody started all sweating. You feel this incredible coolness. Suddenly the body gets very usually cool, why? That's pity. Okay, so pity, rapture, is the outcome of trying oneself and sustaining that application level here. The third factor then is this rapture. So there's nothing, I'm just pointing it out, there's nothing special, it's just phenomenal kind of concentration. And then the next, there's this sukha, sentimental happiness. It's more like this oceanic peace. And experience it. So that's the next level. The full absorption. Fourth, however I classify it, fourth or fifth jhana is this unification, this karata, unpointedness, this absorption. Essentially, it becomes a unification. Many of the mystics would say, it's the Sikh God, they would say, they would interpret, say, I'm a very long retired Roman Catholic. One of my favourite saints was St. Francis of Assisi. If you read his book, Laughing of St. Francis, they were all, St. Francis himself was levitating. So at that stage, you can spontaneously experience psychic powers. The body was levitating. He was also getting the stigma and so on. And even his disciples, monks, they will also have these psychic powers. So why? Essentially, their focus is on Jesus Christ, and devotion, the power of that concentration. Of course, they would interpret it differently, but we were saying it was just these absorption factors. So, even, I don't know if anybody knows transcendental meditation. Have you come across it? It's sort of lost its, not so well known, but at one time they used to advertise on television. I'm talking about 30 years ago. They were advertising this, you could have a weekend and learn to levitate, they said, you see. And show you a picture of people like on mattresses, they're all bouncing up and down. It's supposed to be that they were levitating. Actually, it was just this level of pity, which is reasonable concentration. So, just to say that it's possible in loving kindness meditation that you could reach this level, but not through casual, occasional practice. It's just daily practice again. It's possible to go to China. So, if you did, even if you got concentrated, the mind is wholesome, the mind is very sweet, light, open. If you switch into the Vipassana, which it's clearing away, it's opening up, so that it's so important to Vipassana that you're open to the experience, you relax, so if you can sweeten the mind, essentially it's a sweetener. That's just an aside to familiar perhaps with the jhana effects if they arise. And they will in the past as well. Now, there are benefits, it said, in the Visuddhimagga. There are different ways to do loving kindness. No project Visuddhimagga, Buddha from and it will, if you do it in a systematic way, it will help to develop the concentration. And if you have the concentration with this positive mind states, then you're very likely to imprint that. Because we say it changes the climate of the mind. So if there's any negative thing there at all, then what we're working with is the quality of mind. It can be changed. There's nothing fixed in the universe. Nothing doesn't change. But you have a particular temperament and some conditioning, and there's negative experiences in your upbringing. Let's say that's the end of it. You can change it, especially, in fact, from a Western psychological point of view, this loving kindness meditation is very auto-suggesting. Suggesting these ideas, very positive. So, I especially, as I've said today, found the benefit personally in loving kindness, in that it changes all negative patterns of mind. I used to be very critical. Too fat, too thin, or something. So you're finding fault. And so if you get into any sort of relationship that comes up, it's like a forward defense, you're protecting yourself. You find a flaw in somebody else, you've got to measure it. So you think, but it's actually quite painful, because when you're in a relationship, it's patterns of negative patterns that come up. And it doesn't matter if you know it intellectually, it doesn't make any difference, it doesn't shift it. But if you do loving kindness, it can change the quality of life. You've got neat, old, ossified trauma, you can turn it over, you can change the quality of life. I think that's the greatest lesson really from it. Although in the Visuddhimagga, it actually lists 11 methods, namely the first to do with sleep. Something a lot of stress is caused by not having good, deep sleep, and that's the first benefit listed in the Visuddhimagga. Visuddhimagga be shared by all beings here. By rejoicing in this cause, this gift of merit given by us, may all beings live a happy life, be free from hate, and may they find a path secure, ever precious Christ.
Let us pray.